What is up? Today is day 30, I don't even know, 36, 37? Maybe, yeah, maybe even that. 36 or 37. And so, yeah, I haven't been doing daily videos. As you can imagine, being as consistent as I had hoped in the beginning is actually quite a hard task. It's not something, when you actually try to do it every single day, you realize how difficult sort of that is, even if it's a little volume of work. Um, but what I have done is I've made up for a lot of the days that I have missed, um, just in my spare time, and so I've written down 30 stories in total, which is technically what a month's work would have been if I had done my homework every single day, perfectly. So, we're 36, 37. We're technically a week behind in terms of homework, but hey, that's sort of the reality of the world a little bit. You're gonna miss days. You're gonna fuck shit up. I've tried my best to sort of make up for it, but doing a proper month's work within 37 days, I'm not actually too upset about that. Shit gets in the way. It's not always as easy, as it seems to do it to do even simple things of low volume every single day. Shit gets in the way. So, but this is officially the day where I've done a full month, like a full month worth of Spanish studying and work through using my own method. And I'm just gonna cover through a couple of observations that I've made, and also answer someone's question on a few videos ago. He asked, because a lot of the videos I'm a little bit vague. I'm not very specific in my or perhaps my outcome, simply because it's difficult to express, well, pretty much anything, obviously, in the Spanish language. So it's difficult for people to gauge what level I'm at. But I'm going to try and express it as best as possible. I got a comment and he said, like, what is your level at now at day 29 or whatever it was? Obviously, that was a little while ago, but, roughly, we're in that same sort of time period. A month. So, how is your level at a month? What would you say that is? Now, I don't really have experience, drawing comparisons to my level currently with, like, the A1, A2, B1, B2, C2, C3, that sort of system. Because I'm not really familiar with that. I'm sort of familiar with the HSK system, but that's a Chinese one, so I can't actually tell it. In comparison to that, if that's what you're wondering, I don't actually know. I have no idea. Um, the, the best way that I can say the best things that I've improved in, absolutely. Well, firstly, I came from absolute zero, so that's good to keep in mind, right? I came from complete zero a month, a bit over a month ago. Now I'm at the level where I can recognize lots of words. And the reason why I can recognize lots of words is obviously because I've been writing the most common words over simple stories for the past month. So I'm very, very, very familiar with common words in Spanish. Um, all the articles, um, obviously, all the little filler words. I mean, you know what I mean. Los, il, a. That seems all really, really simple stuff. This is not some sort of flex. I'm saying that obviously I'm very, very familiar with those sorts of things, and I'm familiar with other common words, whether it's like time or not. I don't know. I mean, I could go on and on. There's literally hundreds. Like I go on Link, and I've literally I've covered about 600 words in total. So that gives you a little bit of an insight. So I've exposed myself to about 600 words in Spanish. Let's assume that it's the 600 most common words, you know? Let's just assume it's that. Because that was the reason why I was doing those mini stories in particular, is because they're covering the easy, repetitive, simple sort of stuff. And I would rather learn simple words in context rather than out of context. So that's exactly why I was doing the stories. And it has done a very, very good job at familiarizing, at allowing me to be familiar with, um, what am I saying? The common words. Sorry, someone's calling me. Um, yes. Um, so what is my level at? Well, it's certainly not good. Let's put it that way. You know. So, and also I noticed this is also an observation that I predicted in the beginning, which was that as I progress, as I develop, I will also be more attuned to making the learning process easier, more efficient, and better for me. suited to the level that I'm at, which is constantly changing. So you'll notice that, like in my last video, I presented a new method, and I'm really keen on memorizing a lot of the stories and stuff like that, using a memorization process. But obviously, that sort of method would not have been beneficial within the beginning stages. So it's really a progressive in terms of that. There's not like a set way to learn Spanish or learn any language for that matter. There's no set way. It's a constantly fluidly changing sort of thing. And considering that we're at a month, and now I'm making significant changes. That's actually a little bit of a good insight for people to draw upon and understand that, okay, let's say I'm starting a new language today, but in a month from now, my method's going to be completely different. And if I keep doing the old method in a month from now, it's not going to be beneficial. And if I introduce anything too radical, too new, that's not going to be beneficial either. And it's going to be counterproductive. So you've got to stick to pretty much a method similar to this. Or, I mean, you can do whatever you want. I'm just someone on the internet. So you can judge my method and you can critique it in whatever way you like. You've got to sort of find your own style. But just know that your own style might not last longer than around a month by the looks of it. So yeah, I've been writing stories, right? That's been my thing. I've been accumulating new and common words, and exposure has been the absolute key in this sort of stage of things. Like I said, it's very, very difficult for me to express well, I can't be verbal in Spanish, I mean, I could hold probably a terribly simple conversation, right? But obviously, I have been using a very passive approach to it, particularly in the first 30 days, because obviously there's so much to learn in the beginning that you do have to make it quite easy on yourself, because otherwise you're not going to do it. I mean, starting to learn a language is one of the most overwhelming experiences ever. It's literally one of the hardest fucking things to learn. How are you going to tackle something so large? When you're in the beginning stages, there is so much to learn. It's incomprehensible, simply. So that can be very overwhelming. And so I think that you have to really set the bar low in the beginning. And that's exactly what I did. That's the only reason why I've kept up to 37 days of doing anything remotely consistent, So what would I keep drawing back. What would I say my level is? Look, my exposure to words has been great. So I'm very, very familiar with a lot of Spanish words. And also, as I'm reading it, I also noticed that my pronunciation by nature, I've always been relatively good at reading English and knowing how to say the letters correctly and pronounce it correctly. And as I'm more writing Spanish, I can say that that's also the case, and where that accent is. And I'm trying to really sort of get that down. And so every time you're writing it down, this is why it's such a good thing to write down, because you're writing, it's a physical thing, right? So it's not just reading. Reading's sort of like a mental thing. You're writing, you're reading, so you're doing essentially both those skills, and you're sort of speaking at the same time, because reading is like some sort of form of speaking. You know what I mean? Like if you think about the letters a lot, you are learning. You're learning how to say the words, right? Because you get used to all the letters and stuff like that. So that's been my experience so far from a native English speaker learning Spanish here at day 37. Learning language is a massive thing. I can absolutely say for sure my exposure and my familiarity with the common words in Spanish has it's been great. It's been really steady, good progress in terms of that. So, but that's the only way that I could possibly say that I'm confident in saying where I've improved, So that's pretty much all I have to say about that. So yeah, obviously, what am I going to do now? I've got all these words, 600 words of exposure, but I haven't necessarily memorized all those 600 words. I'm just familiar with looking at them on a piece of paper. So obviously, my next step now is to not just keep writing a bunch more words that I'm going to forget, and instead find a way to revise over my work. And my suggestion in the last video was for me to not only listen and revise and read over and over again, but simultaneously memorize the stories by heart. Now, you can imagine I might run into some complications doing that. That's not something easy. Like I said, you need to set the bar low if you want to do something every single day consistently. Obviously, that's setting the bar quite high. To actively memorize a whole article of writing is not like an easy task or anything. So, but we'll see how it goes. But yeah, that's pretty much my updates so far. Thanks everybody for listening to this. If you found it a waste of time, that's fine. Feel free to comment. But if you found it insightful, well, that's great also. So have a good day, guys. See you.